a drone isn't as easy as you might think. It's not like buying a TV or a car where you go to the shop and you like the look of something, you choose a color or a style and you hand over your money. There are many things that can complicate a drone, and because they're quite expensive, it's really important to know what you're talking about before you purchase it. Otherwise, you're gonna get stuck. Now, I'm gonna base my video on my experience, which is with the DJI range, in particular the Phantoms. But everything that we talk about here will actually apply to any sort of drone you have, whether it's a DJI drone, something like the GoPro Karma, or even something way cheaper that's, you know, just cost you 20 or 50 pounds or something from your local hobby store. So the very first thing we want to talk about today is GPS, Global Position Satellites. They're up in the sky there, they're up there in space, in orbit, doing their thing. But what exactly do they mean to drones? Well, this is where things are going to jump up in price, because if you buy a drone without GPS, it's going to be quite cheap, and probably under about £100 or something. It's really important to know what you're getting or what you're not getting for your money. Now, in a Phantom, the GPS module sits right here, so it's right at the top above all the other electronics, so it gets a pretty clear signal from all the satellites across the world. But if you buy a cheaper drone that doesn't have the GPS, there's two things that are really important to consider, and that is, number one, without the GPS, when you let go of the controls, this is my Phantom controller here, when you're going forwards, when you let go of that and you stop going forward, your drone is slowly going to stop going forwards. But because there's no GPS, it doesn't know where it's supposed to be, so it's just going to sort of glide rather than come to a stop. Secondly, of course, is the wind. If you don't have GPS, that drone doesn't have a clue where it's supposed to be. It doesn't even know that it's drifting. So if you've got wind, anything above about 8 miles an hour, it's definitely going to drift. As soon as you let go of those sticks, it's just going to drift. And I'll demonstrate that to you in a moment. But if you're a novice pilot and you just let go of the sticks, and maybe you're talking to someone or you're showing them or you're working out where you next want to fly, it's very important to know that while that drone's in the air, you might think it's still, but it's actually going to be drifting in the wind at the same direction and the same strength that the wind is flying in. The next big thing, which again relies on your GPS, is what we call return to home. And this is exactly what it says on the tin. If there's something wrong with the drone, if the drone cannot detect your signal, or if it has problems in knowing where it is, it will do one thing, and that is return to the exact spot where it took off from. Because when a drone with GPS takes off, it registers the coordinates of where it is. So when it flies out there, it could be half a mile away or even further. But if there's a problem with the signal, say your controllers completely ran out of batteries or something like that, it would say, hey, where's my owner gone? I better head home, just like a little toddler would, and it'll fly back at whatever altitude you set it to, and then come down and land, usually within a couple of meters of precisely where you took it off. If you don't have GPS, you absolutely do not have a return to home function. So if you're flying over there towards trees or behind rocks or houses or whatever it is, and something goes wrong, you've lost it. It's not going to come back. It doesn't know where it is, it doesn't know where you are, and you're stuck. The next thing we need to discuss is about your camera stabilization. Now, this is my Phantom 3 Professional, and it has what's called a 3-axis gimbal, and that means it has an image stabilization device, all this thing here, on 3 separate axes, and it's got these little rubber bits here to take some of the vibration out of it as well. Now, a lot of the cheaper drones, they say they have image stabilization, but it's very similar to the stabilization you're seeing now on smartphones. It's all done in software. This thing actually, as you can see, if the wind was blowing and my Phantom has to tilt to counteract the wind, that camera stays nice and straight the whole time. It doesn't matter what I do to it, it's going to stay real straight. Quite often when a Phantom is flying into the winds, it'll tilt down, and that's where you see the props just come into view because the camera is staying straight and you just see these props spinning here. It's really important that you don't just go for the software image stabilization. You need a proper 3-axis gimbal, or it's just not going to give you that smooth image that you're probably looking for. So now I have my Phantom 3 hovering in the background behind me. And it is a little bit blowy here, so it is dancing around a little bit. It's fighting the wind. It's not too bad, it's not really tilting around too much, but it is more or less staying still, and that's because the GPS knows and has recorded where it is, and if there's any wind or any external interference trying to push that out the way, the propellers will fight it. However, this will show you what GPS is. There's a little switch right here on the controller. As soon as I flick that switch, we're in ASSI mode, and that's drifting now. I'm not doing anything on the stick, and it's just drifting. It's gone. If I don't do something, I'm gonna lose my drone. I could bring it back, no problem at all, but as soon as I let go of the stick, once again, the wind is going to take over it. There's a big cliff there. I'm going to drift into the cliff. I don't want to do that. As soon as I knock it back into GPS, I can bring it back. And again, it'll just stay there until it receives a different command from me. That could be forwards, backwards, sideways, or up. When we're talking about drones, we're talking about the camera quality as well. It's no good having a really stable and smooth drone giving you that great picture, nice smooth, if the camera is a load of rubbish. And these days, the keyword, the buzzword going around at the moment on drones and on smartphones is 4K. However, if the sensor and the lens in the camera isn't a very good one, those 4,000 pixels mean absolutely nothing. So you could still have a 4K camera that looks like it's filming with a potato. So you need to do some research, and the best way to do this, of course, in modern technology is to have a look on YouTube. YouTube is littered with people demonstrating their drones. It doesn't matter what brand of drone you have. I started on something called an AR drone, which had like a 480p camera on it. It was so bad we actually gaffer taped a GoPro to the top of it to try and get better pictures. Make sure you've got a really decent camera. Do the research on YouTube, have a look at it, take the time, make sure you've got a good camera. Now when you're talking about the range of your drone, you might be encouraged, or you might feel better to spend less money because you might see something that goes 500 meters and think, that's all I ever need. However, there's nothing worse than having a drone and then it flies like 200 meters and then you think, I needed to go further, I needed to follow my friend in the sea or whatever I was doing, and it cuts out. And the thing you need to remember is that when they advertise the distance of your drone, when they say it can fly 500 meters, you have to remember this is in the best possible conditions. So you're talking in a nice open place like here, where I've just got cliffs behind me, but I've got the ocean and a massive long beach. There's no buildings around, there's no electricity around, there's very little interference here. I'm not going to get interference off the waves crashing behind me. So I probably would get an optimum distance here. But if I was flying, you know, even in a park or something, if it's surrounded by houses, all those houses now have Wi-Fi and electricity, and there's going to be a fair amount of interference there. So you're probably not going to get the advertised range on your drone. Why is that important? Well, say for example, there's a model called the Phantom 3 Standard. Now, I'll put up what the range is. I can't remember what the range is, but I'll put that on the screen for you now. So you've got the range of the Phantom 3 Standard, and then the Phantom 3 Professional. Now there is the Advanced as well in between there, the Phantom 3 Advanced, but we're just going to compare both ends of the spectrum. Now I know with a Phantom 3 Professional, you can probably fly about 2 miles with a stock controller, and that's more than anybody needs. It's more than what's legal here in the UK. But if you buy a Phantom 3 Advanced, and it only goes 200 meters or 100 meters before your signal cuts out, then that's a problem, and you're going to be thinking, I wish I spent that extra couple of £100 now. So those are the main things to consider when you're buying a drone. And like I said at the very beginning of this video, the GPS unit really determines whether or not you're buying a cheap drone or a more expensive drone. And then it's like a horrible ladder, because once you've got the GPS, you then need to determine, well, is it smooth? Has it got a 3-axis gimbal? Does it have a 4K good quality camera? Etc, etc. So it's like a horrible learning curve, but pretty much the more you can spend on the drone, the better quality it's going to be. Now what I would say is, if you've never ever flown a drone before, either find someone who has and ask if they can show you and maybe let you have a go on the controls to determine whether or not you think you can control the drone safely. If you're not sure, you can go on Amazon or eBay, and I think they sell them in Argos now, and you can get a micro drone for under £20. And I bought one for both my nephews, and we've all crashed them, and this thing is tiny, but obviously it has no camera and no GPS, but it will teach you to fly left and right. And when you spin around, of course, when the drone is coming towards you, your left is now, you know, the drone's right, etc. So it gets a bit confusing. So I would definitely say, if you've never flown before, go and buy a cheapy drone, or find a friend who's got one, and just get on the controls and see if you can, you know, figure things out. If you can't, then quite simply maybe drone flying isn't for you. I will do another video that hopefully I'll put up on Christmas Day, which will just guide you through it if you've just bought a drone or you just had one for Christmas for the very first time, and I'll put that up on Christmas Day, just showing you the do's and don'ts and how to make sure you don't crash your drone or lose it. If it just flies off to the horizon, it's gone, and you really don't want to be in that situation. I've been there once and I got it back, and I've had a few crashes, but you know, you live and learn. So I'll put that up on Christmas Day. Thanks for your time here, guys. I hope this has helped you in purchasing a drone. Leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.